Welcome to the Mamas at Work podcast with your host, me, Heather Rose. I'm so excited you're here, and I hope you're ready to learn because I have some amazing women coming on to this podcast to talk all about entrepreneurship and being a mom and how we handle it all and juggle it all and maybe even balance. I love to talk about people's passions and find out what makes them excited about what they do and hopefully help the rest of us feel not so alone. So let's get going. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Mamas at Work podcast with your host, Heather Rose. I have with me today, Kristin Chadwick, and I am so excited to talk to her today. We both live in Colorado. We're both podcast producers. We're both women of faith, and I'm really excited about that. So hi, Kristin. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Heather, for having me here on the show. I'm excited to talk about two things that I love so very much, which is being a mama and being a producer and my story, all of that. So thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So on that note, I would love to start just what's your story? How did you get started kind of on this track that you're on?
Yeah. Well, so I will start with I am a mom of four. So I have an almost 16-year-old next week daughter, and then I have a son who's 13, and then I have twin boys that are almost 12. And so we have a very full, lively house around here. And
right, like that, you've got like all like teenagers or almost teenagers, like whoo.
Yes. It became very apparent that I have three boy middle schoolers just about a month ago when we tried to take them to the hot air balloon festival, and they literally were wrestling in the middle of a crowd of like strollers and thousands of people. And I'm like, stop touching each other. It was just a moment of clarity of like, oh yeah, I have three middle schoolers at the same time.
This is my life right now.
Right. We went back to toddlerhood, but okay, that's okay. Yeah, so that's a big portion of my world. And I've been married to my husband for 17 years.
Wow.
And his name is Joshua. He's my best friend. So let's see. I just turned 41 yesterday. And so that is a big deal because
congratulations. Oh my gosh, today is my birthday. This is really weird. We have a lot of stuff in common.
Hey, yay.
Happy birthday to you too.
Hey, September is a high amount of babies that were born.
It really is.
Of the year. So,
yep.
Yes. So anyway, and then my story, my journey is kind of a wild God story. This was back in 2015. Of course, my story starts way before that, but I'll just plop you right into the middle of 2015. And I was going to go back to school for counseling. And just at the last minute, I just felt a check in my spirit of like, I don't know if this is the right timing or if this is the right thing for me to do. And so I ended up calling and unenrolling and saying, I'm not coming to class next week. So,
yeah.
I had no idea why. It just felt like that was what I was supposed to do. So then a couple of days later, one of my best friend's husband called me and was like, Kristin, we are looking to start a grassroots podcast and we want you to be our producer. And I was like, what? I don't even know what a producer does. And he was like, you do. It's in your blood. So
you're like, okay.
Okay. So the backstory with that is my mom was a counselor, or she is a counselor. And my dad has been in the broadcasting industry for decades. And so he saw my best friend's husband saw in me what I didn't know was there at all. And so basically he was like, you know what? I trust you and I trust that you're going to take us where we need to go. And I was like, but I don't, I don't know what to do. And he was like, yes, you do. So I really just self-taught and then asked a few other broadcast producers to kind of take me into an interview process and what was that like. Yeah. And so we ended up building from the ground up a podcast called Rebel Parenting. And this went from like nothing to top 25 within the year. And it was so much fun. So for about 5 years, I coordinated with authors and speakers and influencers to come on the show and had a ton of connections and created the content for the show. So I would help write out the questions that I thought were the most pivotal questions and that people would really want to hear. And yeah, I learned a lot. So with them, they were so sweet in their really calling out in me gifts that I didn't know that I had. And so slowly they would be like, Kristin, come here. We want to hear you behind the mic. And I'd be like, no, 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 I'm good. And slowly but surely, we ended up doing our own little moms segment with my best friend. We called it the Moms on the Mic. And that was so sweet and so fun to just have one of your best friends there. And you're just basically chatting about real life mom conversations. And it ended up transforming into, I started my own podcast and ended up bringing on more and more clients as far as podcasting and helping them produce shows. And it just continued to snowball into a bigger opportunity for me to start my own company. And so fast forward to 2020, I ended up launching my own podcast and starting my own business and went through coaching certification and just learned a ton through all of that. So it's been so rewarding to come alongside other people who don't see the gifts that they bring to the table and in their voice and in their story and their vulnerability and how much it can impact people. And so it's been neat to see firsthand me treated in a way that I got to rise to the occasion, and then to do that for other people now is one of my greatest gifts. So yeah, that's my story.
So lovely. Yeah, no, I love that so much. Well, and I understand that completely about podcasts because I think it's such a unique way to be able to get people's stories out there. And a lot of people don't realize how much they have in themselves to bring to it. And I love that you're able to bring that out in people.
Yeah. It is like one of my, I love the moment when people are like, yeah, so I'm thinking about starting a podcast, but I keep having this conversation of like, but why me? Like, what people really want to hear my story. And that moment, as you know, is such a moment. Like, yes, people want to hear your story because they don't want to feel alone, that they're not the only ones, and that we have this opportunity to bring wisdom, joy, hope, breakthrough, because we are sharing our story.
And it's just fun.
It is so fun. It really is. You get to meet all sorts of fun people that you never would meet at any other capacity. I mean, it's just so cool.
Yeah, no, it's the best. No, I'm completely, totally on the same page with you there because I do the same thing, just bringing people to it and being like, it is, if you give it a chance. And if it is something that they want to do, you don't want to push somebody into a podcast who's like, what? I don't want to do that. But like, yeah, there are so many people that just need that extra kind of, of course people want to hear what you want to say. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Oh my goodness. No, I love that. Well, so my audience is young mom entrepreneurs, and like you said, people want to know that they're not alone. And so you have 3 middle school boys and a teenage girl going on right now, which is a lot. My kiddos are 8 and 9 right now, so I'm looking forward to that. Do you have any bits of wisdom for that kind of stage of life and being a mom and being a mom entrepreneur and all of that? Anything you can say?
I will say for many, many years, I really had some false narrative going on in my head of being an entrepreneur was selfish. So I'll give you an example. So one of my kiddos, he has higher needs. So there was a season where I needed to take a step back and just homeschool. And then there was a season of like, well, we can kind of do a little bit of school and not. And then in real time of this past summer, I still was working through this narrative of, well, if I work on my business, it's selfish. And I finally clicked. This is probably like 10 years of coaching that I've had on myself of like, oh my gosh, it brings me joy. And I'm a better mom when I pour into my business because it's life-giving to me. It brings so much joy in my life that I can walk out of my office and meet my kiddo with a more full capacity because I am working in the gifts that God has given me to do, and that it's not selfish. And because I just remember when my kids were young, I was very burnt out by trying to do all different things of like, well, I want to be a trainer and I want to work at the Y and I want to network market and I want to like all of these little pockets of things where I was trying to like fill an outside source of myself, but it never really clicked in until I knew who I was alone, like without all of those things. So that big picture of knowing who I am, knowing how God sees me, that had to get clicked in first. And then I could work on all of these stories that I would tell myself of, I'm not a good mom if I don't just stay home with my kids. I'm not a good mom if I'm not a homeschooler. I'm not a good mom because I want to be away from my kids for a little bit. Like all of those stories are like, who said that? Who started that story? Because we need to unpack that. And that's not my identity either. Like I love, like I started out the podcast, I love being a mom. It is one of the greatest gifts of my life. And I know that ultimately it's me and Jesus, and I'm accountable to Jesus for what I've done or how I have aligned with him and what my purpose and my mission is in life. But the core of that, of knowing who I am, it's just me and him. And that's what it is. And so, you take away all of the external validations of I'm a good mom, I'm a good entrepreneur, I am successful. All of those external things don't matter unless our internal and our intrinsic motivations are aligned with who he is and who we are ultimately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is something I think I feel like it's so intangible that people can have a hard time being like, oh, okay, yeah, that's what I need to do. Because, being successful, you can put like a dollar amount on it. You can put a reach number, whatever. You can kind of like see, okay, that's when I'm successful. Okay, I'm a good mom when I'm always making dinner, when I'm always home, like there are physical things. So is there in your opinion, is there a way to get to that point? Because it's difficult, and even people that don't believe in God, like I do, but I understand that a lot of people don't, but they need to be able to find something outside of themselves.
Do
you have any wisdom to that?
I would say the biggest thing is awareness. So what, like I said, with the story, what are those things that we tell ourselves that are just there without even a conversation of, I'm curious why that just popped up, or, whether you believe the same thing that I do or not, we all have intrinsic value and we all have worth to be here, and we all have a purpose to be here. And so to start with is, what are those things that light you up? Like we all have moments where we're like, oh my gosh, I just love this moment. Like snapshots, or maybe it's hiking in Colorado and you're in the middle of a hike and you look out and you see the vastness outside of ourselves and you're like, whoa, I am just a small little thing amongst this beautiful country. Just those moments of real awareness of there's something bigger than myself, and like going broad to narrow of,
Yeah.
um, there is so much more to life than just my little world, but it's almost like this, understanding the bigger story and then honing in on what is my story and who am I in this story. And so coming to the table with what are the things that I've gone through in my life that I've made it through, and I can bring that to the table. That's part of who I am. Whether you've had a really crappy childhood or it's been like I'm pretty typical American kid that grew up in a home that both my parents stayed married, or whatever your story. It could be a tragic story. It could be whatever. It's all in who you are designed to be. And that is part of knowing who you are. So, for example, when I really started learning who I was, I thought, so this was the awareness thing. I thought I was labeled as shy as a kid. I was the youngest of four. I was the only girl. I was really quiet and I loved to just observe. So that was my role, right? That wasn't necessarily who I was, but that was my role that I liked to play until I started questioning that story of what if I actually have something to say? And it started with my friend who was like, Kristin, we want to hear you talk behind the mic. Like, we don't want you to just stay behind the camera and write stuff in the background. We actually want to hear from you. And so sometimes it's other people noticing and calling out things in you that we may not see for ourselves. So if you take that version of myself, which was this quiet, shy, I don't want to be the center of attention, to as an adult, realizing like, oh, I actually have something to say and it's worth saying. So my value is I am worthy enough to sit behind this mic and to share this part of my story, and to know that my voice matters. Like I know that to my core, and that is why I can say that to every one of my clients, because I've walked that journey of realizing that is my identity. That is who I am created to be. So, does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah, definitely. And I think it has a lot to do also with staying open,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not feel, I mean, I've had this, uh, journey of being an entrepreneur and how I tend to put myself in a box because I see what other people are doing. And I'm like, okay, if I want to be successful, I need to be like this person, or I need to do these things. And being open to learning from them, I think, is very important, but also being open to realizing what, like you said, is intrinsically valuable to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that can be really hard to do when, there's so much coming at you all the time with social media, with, other well-meaning, beautiful entrepreneurs that, tell you, oh, this is how it worked for me, so this is how you should do it. And I love that you kind of preach, stay true to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, with that awareness piece is having the perspective of what is it that lights me up in what I'm doing, because but the difference between identity and purpose is identity is your being. It is who you are. And then your purpose is how you actually externally put that out into the world. That is your doing, right? So whether I am in the role of mother or wife or producer or coach, or my being is going to be aligned with what is coming out externally, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you're working backwards of like, okay, I'm in a entrepreneurial space where I know that I am bringing the same thing in my work, in my relationships, in my community, then that can be a little peek into, oh, this is who I am. yeah. So the biggest piece is just being aware and being curious. And like you said, when there's so much noise of social media and input, we are constantly consuming something. I'm guilty of it too. I like to have something to listen to. I mean, I'm a podcast producer, so I listen to stuff all the time
Right.
and want to grow. And I have to be super intentional of shutting all of that off and being like,
Mm,
what is going on internally for me? How do
mm,
I process it? Do I need to go take a walk and not listen to anything? Do I need to just go write and just get it all out on paper? Do I just need to go sit in the bath and not think about anything? Or those are all things that on a very basic level, we have to become familiar with ourselves. And I think so many of us struggle with being alone with ourselves and our own thoughts because maybe we get stuck in the stories that we're telling ourselves. And so we don't get very far.
yeah.
Or it can feel nerve wracking because you're like, I don't want to process that. Or,
I don't
I'm
know where that's going to take me.
right, exactly. But the reality is like we have to go there so that we really know who we are. That's the gift of being yourself. One of my all-time favorite books is The Gift of Being Yourself by David Benner. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No.
Oh, it is one of my all-time favorites. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. So you'll have to check it out.
I need to write that down. Hold on.
Okay.
The Gift of Being Yourself.
By David Benner.
Thank you. No, I do need to, because that's been something that's weighing on my heart a lot lately.
Yeah.
Is yeah, like I said, I got kind of sucked into a lot of different things that weren't me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the more that we know who we are, the clearer we can say yes with a full yes.
Yes.
And then
Like that.
yes, so that we can say no to those things that are not really what we're called to do or
Yeah.
what we want to do. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes you just don't want to do it. And that's a whole different conversation of boundaries, but really understanding who you are is the first step of like, well, I really do want to say no to the PTA or the PTO. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to serve in that capacity. And that is okay. Like, you can send in money or you can offer to buy a coffee or,
Yep.
I mean, that is a very real life scenario of really discovering, like, well, that's just not who I am. I don't want to be in whatever
And it's
group or
okay.
whatever. And that is totally okay. Like, you can serve in other ways. So,
And there will be another mom that is like, she's like, yes, I want to do that. So let her do that.
yes, absolutely. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. The world doesn't stop running if we just, say no to things that we're not
Yeah,
fully in.
this is true. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think as moms, I wonder about that too, because as moms, we kind of get into that mode of we need to do everything, right? Because moms are superheroes. Mamas, I
Right.
mean, oh my gosh, we're amazing people.
Mhm.
And
I mean, we are, but
yeah, yeah, we
yeah.
are. And like, but you are still amazing even if you're not doing everything that is like expected of you.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, exactly. And if you're in the space of you've said yes to so many things and you're in that world of uh like if somebody asks you to do one more thing that you might want to just cry,
Huh.
then
Yep.
I want to bring awareness to, okay, let's talk about that. Why does that bring up such intense emotion when it's just somebody asking if you can? And then really unpacking that. And I would want to pull aside that mom and be like, let's go take a nap
Yes.
because you need a nap and you need to
Right.
say no. And oh yes, I really, it's funny. I'm speaking at a young moms group tomorrow on encouraging your kids and speaking life over your kids. But I tell you
Oh,
what, more than anything is I wish I could just hold every young mom's face and be like, it is okay to just stop and put down your phone and don't worry about dinner and don't worry about what your husband needs and like put
Yep.
all of the to-do lists, and it's going to be okay if you just pause for 30 minutes. Like your kid is going to be okay. They can watch Peppa Pig for one episode and you just shut the door.
Even 5, just
I know.
let them do it.
No, yes, for sure. So I think the pressure that we put on ourselves as moms, especially working moms, it can be very intense. So coming back around to knowing who we are is we have to care for ourselves just as much as we care for our kids. And that's really hard to do. But we are just as valuable as they are. And that self-compassion is going to change everything. It's not an excuse either. Like we still can push ourselves, but I think that if we don't allow ourselves space to rest and to get quiet and to know and to be aware and curious of who we are, and restoring those empty vessels that we've been pouring out of, like that is where the beauty comes in, where we can really process being in the present moment with our kids once we have those times. So,
mamas, you heard it here. Like you have permission.
Yes, permission to pause. Yes,
Pause. Like you said, go take a nap, go take a bath, turn off your brain. Everything will be fine. It will work it out, and you need that time.
Yes, yeah,
For yourself.
and ask for help. Ask a neighbor. Ask your husband. I mean, goodness gracious. I know thankfully we have gotten away from the stigma that like dads aren't as helpful. Thank the Lord.
I know, because excuse me, but my husband is incredibly helpful.
Yes, I know. So like that's where we get to partner with each other and be like, hey, I need a full day to work on my business, or I need to not be on call for school or whatever. Right. And just voicing that and not just assuming the role of like, well, it's up to me. It's up to me. I'm the superwoman. I've got to do it. And
they won't know if you don't ask.
They do not know. And they want to help. They want to help. But
they can't read our minds as much as we would want everybody to read our minds.
And for those that don't have somebody like that in their life, then ask family, ask a neighbor. There is plenty of people that would love to help out. So get some rest, mamas. Ask for help and make sure that you're taking care of you and finding who you are, because you'll be so much. I mean, we do this for our families, for our kids, for our businesses, whatever, but all of that will be so much better if we are truly full ourselves. Yes, absolutely. Yep. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kristin. This was a fantastic conversation. I hope to have you back sometime on the podcast. Like I said, now my episodes are shorter. I can have people back. It's going to be great. But it was so wonderful to meet you. Where can everybody find you? I'll have links in the show notes. But yeah, just let everybody know. Yeah. So I have 2 podcasts that I do. One is called Wholistic Hearts, and that's more ministry coaching inside of that. And then Wholistic Podcasting, which is all about podcasting and anything from starting a podcast to growing a podcast. So you can find me at Wholistic Podcasting on any podcast app that you're listening to. And then, of course, on Instagram and Facebook, I'm on there as well, Kristin Fields Chadwick. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for joining me for today's Mamas at Work podcast. I am so glad you were here, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did and learned a lot, because I know I always do. Please join me at my Mamas at Work Facebook group, where we will be talking about the women that are on this podcast, and you can sign up to be a guest on the podcast as well if you would like to. Thank you so much. See you next Friday.